Magnitsky Act, guess who pushed it? Me. It came from the original Belarus Democracy Act, which I did in 2004, when all these people said, oh, don't do that, don't sanction Lukashenko. Well, we did. That law was signed by George W. Bush in 2004, and we got a lot of prisoners out, and we said, we're not kidding. You're not going to be able to do business here. And that's the underpinning of the entire Global Magnitsky Act. It came from the Belarus Democracy Act. And I will look to do specific, country-specific legislation to help the president get adherence to, and these countries, because he's already doing it, to what they've agreed to. And again, I can't say it enough. When you sign something, you put your honor on the line, and then you do nothing, or you wink and nod and you allow certain things to happen. I'm talking about individual players in the two countries, particularly M23. We have to get more involved too as a Congress, and I plan to lead it. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dash Troutman, thank you again. While I appreciate President Trump's attention to this war, I think there is a long way to go before peace is actually realized in Eastern Congo. Even after the signing of the Washington Accords last month, the M23 and Rwanda Defense Forces took over Uvira in its third new offensive in the Kivus in 2025. So while I was glad to see Secretary Rubio's and Ambassador Waltz's tough messages towards Rwanda, including that they will use tools at their disposal to hold Rwanda accountable, we have yet to see any of those tools deployed nearly a month later. What punitive measures, including sanctions, is the U.S. prepared to take against Rwanda and the M23 to force their full retreat to 75 kilometers from Uvira that the United States has pushed for, and to hold them accountable for violating the Washington Accords?
Thank you, Ranking Member, for the opportunity to address that. As I mentioned, we continue to hold all options on the table to incentivize changed behavior and incentivize Rwanda to comply with its obligations under the Washington Accords. We continue to believe that the Washington Accords are viable and that once we return to a state of compliance, we can continue with our oversight of that process.
Is there a timeline we can expect actual concrete consequences to be rolled out?
Sure. So we continue to discuss at the highest levels which consequences might be levied. I will say that we have been very clear that this issue does affect all aspects of our bilateral relationship. We would be much farther along in implementing our bilateral economic MOU and other bilateral agreements and arrangements with Rwanda were it not for this grave miscalculation. So we will continue to put pressure through all avenues.
Okay, but you can't give me an actual timeline of when we will see actual consequences?
Those decisions are above my pay grade, but we do continue to discuss.
All right, and as you know, the FARDC and Wazalendo forces have moved into Uvira. How is the U.S. engaging with the Congolese government to ensure a return of the civil administration to the city rather than military governance?
Thank you for your attention to the situation in Uvira. We have seen FARDC forces move back into the city and gradually reassert control. First and foremost, we messaged that there is a strong need to protect civilians, and we were very concerned about the continued dangers that civilians might face. So we did make that clear to the DRC government, and we continue to discuss local governance issues with them in all parts of Eastern DRC.
Okay, but we don't have a timeline yet on when we'll get to a civil administration of the city?
Since we're still assessing the situation in the city and where M23 has actually withdrawn to and how much control the FARDC have over the city, we're still in those discussions.
All right, and then my office is receiving reports of abductions and reprisal attacks against the Banyamulenge in Uvira by the Wazalendo and other unidentified armed elements. What steps is the U.S. taking to mitigate civilian protection risks to residents of conflict-affected communities in and around Uvira?
Thank you for that question. We remain very engaged with the DRC government in emphasizing the importance of protecting civilians and using channels of communication with other groups, including Wazalendo, to emphasize that reprisals cannot be seen in these communities. I think this is a good time to also bring up the humanitarian access issue. Unfortunately, we continue to see obstruction of humanitarian efforts really by all sides, and that really affects the reporting that we're able to get on the situation on the ground, and of course it affects the assistance that the communities in need are able to receive. So we continue to push all sides to allow unfettered humanitarian access to these areas.
All right. I want to turn now to the importance of civil society. I appreciate that you acknowledged how important they are. I'm glad to hear that the plan is to have the AU do some consultations. But, what is your response to criticism from Congolese opposition and civil society figures, including Nobel laureate Denis Mukwege, that the U.S.-backed peace process has effectively rewarded Rwanda with pledges of U.S. investment for attacking DRC?
Thank you for that. So we do continue to engage civil society, especially at our embassy level. Our embassies are quite engaged with local groups, especially in designing the regional economic integration framework. They were consulting a variety of groups in developing that key economic aspect of these agreements. And again, we do look to the African Union to play an integral role in bringing civil society voices to the forefront in implementation. We know that's critical to a sustainable peace, and we really hope that that will be one of the deliverables that the AU is able to step in on. I think that's what I would say for now.
Okay. Well, I think most of the civil society that I've spoken to would disagree with the assessment that they have been engaged in this process. So I would urge you to rectify that situation, because the Congolese have, been privy to 3 decades of failed peace agreements, and I think those civil society groups on the ground know what's needed to actually be able to make this durable. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Dr. Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this